Hey, 7th grade, it's Mr. Herzberg here. Today is Monday, April 27th, 2020. We're going to be going over Pigman, chapter 11. We're going to go over the chapter 10 questions from Friday, and we're going to go over the journal for today and this week's standard. Let's get started. Today you're working on RI 7.3, reading informational text. 7.3, you're going to be analyzing the interactions between individuals, events, and ideas in a text, and how these ideas and events influence the author's writing, okay? So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means today you're going to be reading about Betty Friedman, who was born in Illinois in 1921. She is a sort of her personal life affected the women's rights movement. So what I'd like for you to do is read these 3 or 4 paragraphs and then explain how her personal life affected your life. Or maybe, if you're a girl, if you're not, how did it affect your mother's life or other women in your life, their lives, sisters, classmates? And so, what do you think it did for women in general in society? How do you think she helped Betty Friedman's life and her life experiences, things that happened to her, directly and indirectly affected the way women are treated, okay? So again, use the writer's personal life to show how it impacted things later. Remember, persuade, inform, and entertain. Those are the 3 things we're looking at here. More so in your case, it's going to be inform, okay? So, good luck on that. If you have any questions, I'll be at Google Meets 1:32. Let's go over the Pigman questions. Next, from last week, why does Lorraine's mom hate men? Well, we learned that first of all, her husband and Lorraine's mother passed away, her father, passed away some time ago, and that it was not a good relationship, that Lorraine's mother and father did not get along. As a result, Lorraine's mother has a negative view on men. So she sort of projects that on Lorraine, and whenever Lorraine goes out, she tells Lorraine men are evil and to stay away from them. Why does Mr. Pignotti look tired and depressed? They get to Mr. Pignotti's house in chapter 10, and they realize that Bobo, his friend at the zoo, is ill, and that he's not like talking, and that he's not his normal chippy self. Okay. What did John and Lorraine tell Mr. Pignotti? They tell him that they are not, in fact, who they say they are. They're not charity workers. That they're teenagers, and they've been lying to him this whole time. What does Mr. Pignotti tell John and Lorraine? He tells them that his wife is dead. He finally comes around and says that she's been dead, and that he doesn't know why he didn't tell them. What happens to change the mood? John goes and gets roller skates on. John sort of rolls through the house on roller skates. Lorraine comes in with chocolate-covered ants and offers those to people. She kind of tries to lighten the mood. What does John do to entertain the other 2? He gets on the roller skates and he starts roller skating all around the house, up and down the stairs, acting a fool. But he's trying to do it to cheer up the mood. I mean, Mr. Pignotti got really sad when he talked about his wife. So it's kind of a nice thing to do, but reckless. What is each person in the murder story symbolic of? At the end of chapter 10, got to do one of my favorite things from this book, and Mr. Pignotti sort of gave the kids a hypothetical situation, which is a situation where it doesn't really happen, and then asked the kids to sort of weigh in on what they think each of these things, what should happen in this year. And the wife equals fun, a husband equals love, the lover equals sex, the assassin is money, and the boatman is magic or imaginary things. Okay? What example of onomatopoeia occurs at the end of this chapter? We know onomatopoeia are sound words, right? So right here, it's John running up and down the stairs with roller skates, and it's clomp, 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 clomp. It's the sound of the skates. What happens to Mr. Pignotti as a result of being it during the game? It says here, he doubled over, his eyes fastened on me, gaped like a fish. He pressed his right hand to his chest, and he fell down the stairs. So they were playing tag. They all got their roller skates on that they bought from the mall. And unfortunately, Mr. Pignotti has what appears to be a heart attack. He gets a little too excited with the kids, and they're running around the house, and he has a heart attack. So let's get on to chapter 11 and see what happens as a result of Mr. Pignotti having a heart attack and how the kids are going to have to get out of this situation. I knew it was a heart attack right away. Lorraine almost passed out, but I knew enough to call the police. They got there in about 10 minutes later with an ambulance from St. Ambrose Hospital, and we almost didn't have enough time to even get the roller skates off. 2 attendants came in with an old lady doctor, and we told them how we'd been shoveling snow and had been out all day, and they just whisked him away on a stretcher like an old sack of potatoes. He was breathing just fine, maybe a little fast, but it certainly didn't look like he was going to die or anything like that. "Excuse me, who are you?" the cop asked. We're his children," I said, and I thought Lorraine was going to collapse with fear. We both knew what her mother would do if she found out. I answered the questions the policeman asked, and when I didn't know the answers, I made them up. "What's your father's age?" 58. "Wife?" Deceased. "Where was he born?" Sorrento. "You 2 kids don't look Italian to me." "Our mother was Yugoslavian." I mean, those particular cops were so dumb it was pathetic. I felt like I was talking to 2 grown-up dentists who had arrested mental growth. It was a big deal over nothing. I mean, they wanted to know if we could take care of ourselves, and we assured them we were very mature. "What's your name?" It's John Pigman." "And what about you?" The cop pointed at Lorraine. "Lorraine, Pignotti." They finally left after they had a good look around the place. I mean, the furnishings were enough to make anybody think a pack of wild hogs lived there. But they probably were anxious to get along on the road at the local bars and collect their graft for the week. Lorraine got furious when I told her that, and she hoped I needed help someday and were no policemen to call. Then she called me stupid and left me standing there in the hall. I walked to the edge of the living room and just waited for the lecture. I knew it was coming. "You know, John, you shouldn't have gone upstairs with those roller skates," she finally said as though in a trance. I didn't think he was going to follow me up. "You know what, John, you never know when to stop, do you?" "Oh, shut up, Lorraine," I snapped at her. "You're beginning to sound like my old lady." She turned her head, and I was sorry I yelled at her. He's not going to die. It was just a little stroke, that's all. He was breathing fine when they carried him out on the stretcher." I needed 2 beers after that, but Lorraine was nervous about staying there anymore. So we found the keys to the house in the kitchen, locked up the place, and walked into the cemetery. We didn't last long there because it was too cold and she felt terrible when we walked by a freshly dug grave. There's nothing worse than a freshly dug grave with snow falling on it. The next day we cut school at took the number 107 bus to Ambrose Hospital. We got there half an hour before visiting time, and they gave us time to check on Mr. Pignotti and find out he wasn't dead after all. In fact, he was so alive he looked better than ever, but I heard that's the way a lot of people are when they have heart attacks. I mean, that's supposed to be the real danger period because they feel so energetic, but if they exert themselves, they can have another heart attack and just croak. The Transylvania-looking nun nurse made us sign our names in a book that gave us a couple places so that everyone at the hospital would know we had permission to be there. We're not a couple of ghouls riding the morgue. I mean, come on. I hate to go to the hospital because you never know when you get in there, if one of those elevators comes in, the guy next to you might have some kind of plague or something. You should have seen Lorraine carrying 11 gladiolas. She looked like a Mongolian peasant hawking flowers in a flea market. We took them from 3 different graves in the cemetery, and we couldn't find a 12th gladiola anywhere. But who counts a dozen gladiolas when you get them? We pretended we were John and Lorraine Pignotti because only members of the immediate family were allowed to visit him. "Mr. Pignotti, your son and daughter are here," this fat, huge nurse said, opening the door to room 304. And there was Pigman, propped up on his pillow with the bed raised. It was a semi-primitive room, and I'd better not tell you about the other patient in there. It made it semi-private because he looked like he wasn't in long for the world. They had a guy with some kind of oxygen tent nearby that looked like a malaria net. "Hi," Mr. Pignotti said with a great big grin on his face. You would have thought it was a guest in a hotel the way he looked, with the breakfast tray right in front of him on a weird-looking bed table. "Look at the lovely flowers they brought you," the fat, huge nurse said. "I'll put them in some water." She flashed a gigantic smile at herself and then beat it out of there. Mr. Pignotti, we had to make believe we were your kids," I explained, and you should have seen the smile on his face. "Are you all right?" Lorraine asked him. "Of course I'm all right," he laughed. "I'm getting out of here in a few days. There's nothing wrong with me. The doctor even said so." There was a lot of small talk after that, and Lorraine never took her eyes off the guy in the other bed, who looked like he was 193 years old. Then the fat, huge nurse came back in with the gladiolas in this crummy glass vase that looked like they had just dug it in the backyard. "Aren't they pretty?" she said, and then beat it out of the room again. "Is my house all right?" Mr. Pignotti asked. "Yeah, we locked it up last night after the cops left." Lorraine fumbled in her pocketbook. "Mr. Pignotti, we brought you the keys." She held them out to him. No. You can keep them," he said. "Maybe you'll want to watch some TV or, have some more of my chocolate ants." He laughed as usual. I don't think so, Mr. Pignotti." "I don't know, maybe we will," I said, taking the keys right out of her hand. We can leave them in your mailbox in case we don't get cut to school tomorrow." I really don't think I flashed Lorraine my dirty look, and she never even finished her sentence. "You're looking so good, Mr. Pignotti," I commented. "I'm sorry if I was any trouble yesterday." "Are you kidding?" Lorraine and I thrive on excitement, Mr. Pignotti. And then the three of us all giggled. "What do they give you here for breakfast?" Lorraine inquired, which was a little uncalled for since all you had to do was look at the tray and you could tell it was the usual rubbery eggs you always get in a hospital. "You didn't even eat your toast," Lorraine said. "Do you think you could stop by and see Bobo for me?" "Sure. Just tell him I miss him." Just then the guy in the other bed took a choking fit, and the three of us just looked very uncomfortable until that was over. The fat nurse came in and did something to him to make him stop. It looked like she strangled him, actually. "Get him the peanuts in the yellow package, not the red package. He likes the dry roasted ones better." "Sure thing, Mr. Pignotti." "And half a hot dog. Don't give him the whole hot dog because he never eats all of it." "How are you all doing?" the nurse said, bounding in and exhiberating in inveries again. "Your father's a really funny man," she squealed. "He knows an awful lot of jokes." "We know." Then she started cranking up his bed. He's a very funny man. It was scary the way Mr. Pignotti's head seemed to stick out of the mountain of white sheets and sink slow downward. "I think you guys better get going now." "We're going to miss you, Mr. Pignotti," Lorraine said, as though she was giving the last rites. "Just take care of Bobo before I get out," he smiled. "And the house, make yourselves as comfortable as you can, and use anything that's there. Goodbye, Mr. Pignotti." By the time we left, I was so glad to see the outside world. I thought I'd been in a prison for 73 years. The smell of hospital, it always makes me think of a death. In fact, I think hospitals are exactly what graveyards are supposed to be like. They ought to bury people in the hospital, let sick people get well in cemeteries. The sun was shining, the ice was beginning to melt in the street. A big plow came down Forest Avenue, scooping snow into the front and throwing it out through the pipe contraction in the back. It looked like a black dragon devouring everything it touched. Pretty soon, our bus came, and then we hiked all the way back up to the house. Everything that happened from then on out, Lorraine blames on me, and maybe she's right. Things were just fine at first. Lorraine was in her glory because she had a brainstorm about making spaghetti. That would have been a superb idea if I'd overlooked the fact that I loathe spaghetti. Blech. Mr. Pignotti had some sauce left in the fridge, and we were there 3 packages of No. 9 vermicelli. So I decided I'd go ahead and let the little homemaker go ahead with it. "I miss him," Lorraine sighed, sprinkling salt into the boiling water. "Who?" "You know very well who, John." It was sort of strange without him around. I stayed in the living room and watched TV, and when I mentally couldn't stand it anymore, I went upstairs. "John, what are you doing up there?" "None of your business, Lorraine." I went to the bedroom, opened the closet with all of Mr. Pignotti's stuff and his clothes. He didn't have that much, but I knew even if they were next to me, he wouldn't mind if I tried on a jacket or two. My own father wouldn't let me touch his clothes. I tried on a shiny blue shirt that looked like it was so worn I think Columbus must have spotted it on the New World. The lapels were so big I felt those were wearing reverse water wings. There were a full-length mirror in the door, and when I saw myself, I realized I wasn't plain old John Conlon anymore. I was a famous actor getting ready to go out in front of the cameras and play a role of a distinguished European businessman and lover. "Spaghetti's ready, John." I took one of his ties and looked like a red and blue flowered kite and I hung it around my neck. And when I found a makeup pencil in the top bureau drawer, my transformation was complete. I drew on a mustache. "Good Lord," Lorraine gulped. I thought she was going to drop the pot of spaghetti. She had set the dining room table, pulled up the shades that was pretty shadowy. That made me look perfect. In the middle of the table were 2 religious-looking candles burning. "Huh, John, you look fantastic," Lorraine said. "You think so?" "Wash the sauce on the stove. I want to wash my hands upstairs," Lorraine said, and caught a bit of a wicked smile on her face. The sauce came to a bit of a boil, and I had to keep shutting the heat off because the goo was spilling over the edge of the pan. Lorraine, will you hurry up, please? I'm coming, John. Lorraine's voice came from the bedroom as if she was doing something. I finally shut the stove off and went in the living room. I was planning on put the TV on or something, and I was mad as bleep because I knew spaghetti was congealing in the pot. I don't like spaghetti when it's normal, let alone congealed. Good evening, came this sexy voice from the stairs. She stood there for a moment, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I knew she'd been digging in some of the old rags of Conchetta's, but I hadn't expected this. She was wearing a white dress with 2 million ruffles and a neckline that was the lowest she'd ever worn, and makeup and high heels and ostrich feather in her hair. She looked just like she was out of one of those actresses you see on the TV summer shows. You look beautiful, Lorraine. Do you mean it, John? I let out a growl and started towards her, imitating Bobo. She squealed laughter and ran back up the stairs with me right after her. Stop it, John. I'm a handsome European businessman, and you're in love with me. She tried to hold the bedroom door shut, but I forced it open, ran to the far side, and so there was only the bed between us. Come on to me, my darling. We were both laughing so hard we could hardly speak. One kiss is all I ask, John said. I caught her and threw her on the bed. I could hardly hear the sound of the cameras clicking away on the set. One kiss, Lorraine. John, stop it. I'm not kidding. She started laughing again, right in my arms, but I stopped and put my lips on hers. It was the first time we ever kissed. When I moved my lips from hers, we just looked at each other, and somehow we weren't acting anymore. I think we better get back downstairs, Lorraine said. All right. Dinner is served, she announced, carrying his big plate of spaghetti. We each sat opposite ends of the table with candles burning. I poured some wine into this long-stemmed glass, and for a few moments we just sat looking at each other. Her with the feather in her hair, and me with my mustache. To the Pigman, I said softly. To the Pigman. She lifted her glass, and she was lovely. Wow. John and Lorraine. First kiss, taking advantage of a situation, getting into trouble. Are they taking it too far? Should they leave the house alone? Should they just have given the key to Mr. Pignotti? Probably. But they're kids, they're not thinking on those terms. See you at the Google Meet if you have any questions. 1:30 to 2. Don't forget your journal and your questions. Talk to you guys later.